Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today is update day. I'm going to update all the trees in the greenhouse here, the trees in the polyhouse, and the trees that I have out on the benches. I've been moving a lot of my temperate trees from the basement, where they've been cool for the winter, out here into the greenhouse. And the weather outside is still quite cool, but I can turn the heat on here at night if it starts to get down towards the freezing mark. I think they'll benefit from the sunlight out here in the greenhouse. So we'll start here. Here's my old jade cutting that I got from Connor. It's growing in the baobab style, and it's looking good. It's got a nice rough trunk on it. I'm developing the branch structure, and it's quite dense, so I'm looking forward to developing that more into the future. It's coming along nicely. Over here I have an assortment of jade cuttings. These are my tricolor jades here. They get like pinks and yellows on the leaves. They're quite fancy. I'll grow one as a mature tree and give the cuttings away to someone else. Behind that is all my little miniature bonsai, my mini bonsai. They're doing very well. They overwintered nicely in the basement. My winter flowering jasmine is growing nicely. The citrus are starting to wake up, and the jades are all doing well. Over here I've got more jades, and they're looking good. They're recovering from their hard pruning. I've got the little forest down here. I've got my old jade that I got from Hong here. There's some aloes, some aloe pups that are growing. My lithops back here are looking very plump and healthy. And here's that jade forest that I cut back quite severely, and it's looking good. You can see all the new growth coming in now on it. It's very dense. So that'll, I'll just let it grow, fill in again, and then tackle the pruning again at a later date. So these are the jades that I started scarring the trunks up on them. So there'll be more scarring coming to those over the summer. Up here in the corner of the greenhouse, I have my English oaks, my royal oaks. I gave those a really good root pruning this spring. Got the root system nice and radial and flat. And they're doing really, really well. I'm very happy with them. Here's my bur oak here. It's coming into leaf. That also got a pruning this year, a root pruning. I cut the taproot in half and it's recovered nicely. I've got my semi-cascade lemon tree out here. It should be waking up soon and growing. Here's my cherry tree in the corner. It's I still have some branches that don't have any growth on them, but there's green buds on them. So I'm hoping all the branches survive and start picking up vigor. If not, I'll just have to restyle the tree with what I get. Here's my wild almond tree down here, and it's looking really good. It's leafing out really nicely after its root pruning and repotting. There's a few dead leaves up top that were grown indoors and they didn't like the sunlight out here, so they've died off, but there's lots of new buds coming on them. My Chinese privet down here, it's losing its indoor leaves and it's starting to get buds to grow once again, so it's sort of in between dormancy and growing. Here's my new poplar forest. You can see the tips are green on them. They're starting to leaf out, so that's exciting. I hope they all make it. Here's that elm I collected from the backyard, a little elm seedling. I'm not sure what kind of elm it is, but it's growing really well. No progress on the pomelo seedlings yet, but there are buds forming on the trunk lines. So that's kind of exciting. It looks like they'll be leafing out soon. Hopefully they'll all make it. We'll see. Here's my Portulacaria afroforest, growing in the baobab style, my African landscape here, maybe Kabu Island. So some of the indoor leaves, they were quite yellowy looking. they're starting to green up now, and the trees are starting to grow. Here is my Siberian elm forest. I repotted this year, did a lot of root pruning, and they're leafing out nicely. Here's my firethorn down here. It's flowering. It's not growing yet. I probably should remove those flowers and just, you know, put all the energy into growth, but I'm sure that'll take off soon. There's my thuya I got from Connor. It was repotted this spring and it's looking good. It's still growing. There's my maple penjing behind there with the fisherman. All the trees survived. They're growing with a lot of vigor, so that will need pruning soon. Behind that is my pomegranate that I got from Zen. It's looking good. It's growing like a weed. There's a grass planting in there. There's my silk tree. It's leafing out nicely. It's gaining strength all the time after it's repotting. So this one tree here, I didn't know what it was, but it looks like it's, what do you call it? A Judas tree, I think they call it, or a castura, maybe? I think that's what it is. So I'm happy to have one of those. It's looking good. Beside that is another unknown tree, but it's got all kinds of buds forming on it now after the repotting. It's looking good. Here's my crimson hawthorn. It's growing tall and mighty. It's looking good after it's repotting. Here's my Korean maple. It's growing well. It's the shoots are extending. I'm just letting that grow, gain vigor. Beside that is my trident maple. It's also growing really well. I've got a date palm down there that's struggling a bit but doing okay. I've got a hibiscus down there. It's just waking up. Here's my mulberry tree. It's growing strongly, looking good. Behind that I have a bougainvillea that I just brought up from the basement. It's leafless at the moment, but that should start growing once it gets warmed up. Here's my old thuja from the elephant penjing. My oldest tree that's grown as a bonsai. It's still looking good so far. It's not out of the woods yet. I'm hoping it grows with vigor this year in its new pot. It should. It's doing well. Here is my Rose of Sharon. It's growing really, really well. It got repotted this spring. Here's my Montpellier maple. I think that's what you call it. It's doing well. The other thujas from the elephant penjing are also looking good. There's a little ficus back there that's not really growing yet, and the little spruce down here is looking good. I still have my geranium from Tom from Grow and Clip Bonsai for Seniors. It's flowering. It's looking quite colorful. My corkbark oak that I got from Philippe. Not much happening on it yet, but it's got buds all over the branches, so I think it's about ready to grow for spring. Over here is my catalpa tree. It's leafed out and growing. My little bear planting down there, my April Fool's joke, the little hemlock is growing. It's looking okay. In this corner of the greenhouse I have my sarissa. I brought that up from the basement and I did quite a pruning on it. Yeah, quite a pruning. I made a video of that. That'll be coming soon. The tree doesn't look very good right now, but I kind of was pruning for the future, sorting out a lot of structural issues on it. And so once that starts growing in, I'm going to repot it, and there'll be lots of pruning coming up on it, trying to get that acacia style shape to it. In the very back corner are my crab apples. They're all looking good. You can see some of them have some black leaves on them, and that was from the cold. They got a little frostbite, but they all look healthy. They'll be growing soon, I think. Beside that is my field maple. It's doing really well. Nice small leaves. It's growing in quite nicely. The mugo pine that I repotted, I bare rooted and repotted, is still looking good. The needles are starting to extend on the branches. My Dawn redwood down here, a little seedling, is looking healthy and growing. There's my Virginia creeper vine. I put it in that small Aran pot and it's looking good, nice and healthy. I brought this pomelo up from the basement. It hasn't started to grow yet. You can see the fruit on it from last year. Here's my Chinese elm. I brought this up from the basement and it's growing very well. Behind that are the two larch I got from Zen. Those were repotted and pruned this year. They're looking good. There's a lot of growth extending on it now. Here is my other bur oak. This got repotted this year. It's growing well. It's a tall stick, but someday I hope it becomes a nice bonsai. Here is my multi-trunk thuja. I repotted this year. It's looking good so far. Behind that is my cotoneaster. Still flowering, growing, looking good. Over here is a maple of some sort, I think. I think it's a silver maple, but I'm not sure. It has that look to the leaves. But anyway, I'm just growing it. Here's the rest of the thujas from my elephant penjing. They're looking good. Here's my jade forest, the one I was rebuilding after a lot of the trees died in the forest. So I planted a lot of cuttings and it's on the rebuilding phase. Behind that is my wisteria. I severely root pruned it 2 years in a row, and you can see the vines have tangled around each other and it's growing up into the greenhouse structure up here. Yeah, it's really growing strongly. It's unbelievable when you look back at the root pruning I did on it. There's some dwarf hinoki cypress cuttings down there. They're still alive and growing. Here is my nightshade vine. So I repotted it from the small pot into a big pot this year, and boy did it make a difference. It's growing like crazy now. Really healthy. I haven't seen it grow like this, you know, since, well, this is the first time it's ever grown with that much vigor. So they definitely like kind of the deeper, larger pots. And here is my Austrian pine. It's looking really good. I bare rooted that, repotted it this spring. The smaller candles on the branches, the needles are starting to come out on it now. The sacrifice branches and the candles are growing really big. They haven't started opening up yet, but they will soon, I think. Here's my edible figs. No growth in those yet, but the tips are still green. Here is my holly oak, and that is from Dave from Blue Sky Bonsai. It's got buds forming, it's ready to grow. Here's my whipcord cedar. It's got growing tips growing on it. The ones I pruned are starting to get some growth near the tips on some of them. So I think that'll survive. I think it survived the repotting. Here's my hop hornbeams. 2 of the 3 are growing. This one's a little weak, but it has a new bud on it. The third one I think is going to make it, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. There's a little firethorn there too. Here's my Arakawa maple. That got repotted this year into a new pot. And it's growing really, really well. Very strong, so that'll need pruning soon. Down below the bench here I have my Japanese black pine. Not much activity on it yet. It got repotted this year, pruned. I got cut the top off, and So we'll see what happens with that. Behind that are all my pawpaw trees. So yeah, they're coming out into leaf now, looking good. I've never seen a pawpaw bonsai, so maybe these will be the first. They're looking really good. I think I have a willow back here growing as a bonsai, doing all right. Here's my yew tree. It's starting to come out into leaf. Here's my olive that Scott got me from Tropical Expressions. I just brought it up from the basement and it's starting to grow. Over here is my bald cypress. That got repotted and root pruned this year and it's growing nicely. Beside that is my elm I got from the backyard. It's coming into leaf nicely too. And here is my giant sequoia forest. You can see the trees are starting to green up and grow. Yeah, they sure want to grow tall. It's hard to keep the bottom branches alive because all the vigor goes to the tips, but we'll see what we can do with these. Try and keep these trees miniature. Here's a lavender plant I got from Zinn. It's doing well. Here's my Russian olive that I got from Derek. It's looking good. It's growing quite nicely. I have a cryptomeria down here I got from Matt. It's doing well. My miniature ivy is looking good. I have a ginkgo here grown from a seed that got root pruned this year. The growth on it doesn't look real strong yet, but I think it'll pick up. Behind that is my Japanese graybark elm. I repotted it this year and it's growing like crazy. It's just, yeah, really good. Here are my London plane trees, a little forest of them. It looks like every tree survived the repotting and they're starting to grow. I brought my acacias up yesterday from the basement. There was some growth on them from the basement, but not much, so I'm hoping they break dormancy soon and begin to grow again for the year. Over in the corner I have my ponytail palm. I brought that up yesterday from the basement, so not much happening on that yet. I did notice over the winter that it's kind of a succulent tree and the base of it stores a lot of water, and I didn't water it a whole lot over the winter, and I noticed the base started to shrivel a bit. It looked less plump. So now I think out in the greenhouse here with regular watering and sunlight, I think you'll see that pump back up and start to grow with a lot of vigor this year. So I will be pruning that this year. I do want to develop, a bushy canopy on top. So I've got 3 strong shoots growing on it now. So once it starts to grow with a ton of vigor and the weather warms up, I'll do a chop on the top of it and just see what happens. Down below in this corner of the greenhouse, I have my old Douglas fir down here. It's looking good. The buds are starting to come out now. I'm just starting to see some green tips on the buds. And I've got 2 other larger Douglas firs here that are also starting to green up. So I think all 3 of them survived the repotting, no problem. I have my lemon tree down here that was just brought up yesterday. I can see some buds already starting to pop out on it. So it'll be warmed up now and it should start growing soon. I've got my oldest lemon tree over here, and it's in the same boat. It was just brought up from the basement and it should start growing with a ton of vigor soon. Behind that I have my orange tree back there, and it's also just come up from the basement, so no activity on it yet, but that should happen soon. Down here on the floor I have my saberleaf ficus. I just brought this up from the basement also, so it'll be ready to grow for the summer. Behind that I have my grapefruit tree, and that also just got brought up from the basement, so no activity on it yet. Here is my 60th birthday Scots pine. All the candles are coming out into needles now. It's a very slow growing tree, this. I don't have to pinch the candles on it because they don't really extend all that much. You get, candles about this length on it. So it's more, you just let it grow and then you thin it when it needs thinning. So there will be some pruning coming to that this year. My goal still is to grow a root system in this, an upper root system in this bonsai soil, and hopefully someday get it into a bonsai pot. So yeah, so basically I'm still just letting it grow with a ton of vigor, hoping to generate a good root system. That's it for the trees in the glass greenhouse. Let's head out to the unheated polyhouse now. In the polyhouse here, I have my American elm. I repotted this into this concrete pot by Lewis. Beautiful pot. It really matches the tree nicely. I can imagine this with a layer of moss. So you've got the gray pot, the green moss, the gray trunk, and then the green canopy, which is starting to come out now, which is really exciting. I always worry, after repotting a tree and doing severe root pruning, I just always hope they make it, and it looks good so far. I mean, the leaves are all popping out, and I'm getting a lot of back budding too. There's back buds coming out on all the branches, which is really, really good. So I think the American elm has made it through its repotting into its first bonsai pot, so that's exciting. Beside that, I have my ash tree that I severely root pruned, and it has buds starting to pop out on it. It's not out of the woods yet, this one, but I hope it makes it, and I hope someday I can turn it into a nice tree. Here's the spruce I repotted recently. This was from Bruce's spruce. No activity on it yet, but it's still green, which is a good sign. Here's a willow I got from Josh from the Toronto Bonsai Society. I did a big chop on the top of it. It used to be quite a tall tree. So I'm just letting all those branches grow in, thicken up, and yeah, willows are a tough tree to grow in a pot. So I might transfer this to the ground. A lot of people who grow willows leave them in the ground, and then when they want to show them at a show, they dig them up, put them in a pot, show the tree, and then it goes back into the ground. For some reason, willows don't like pots, and it may be the temperature of the roots, I think. I think they like to keep the root system cool, and I think that's the secret of success, because it's not watering. I water them lots. I've had them in trays of water, and they still don't like growing in pots. So I think the secret is to keep the root system cool, and that's what happens when you put them in the ground. It keeps that root system nice and cool. So over here I have my buckthorn that I did a major repot on. A lot of sorting out of the root system. And you can see it's coming into leaf quite nicely. The canopy's covered in leaves, but again, it doesn't mean it's survived the repotting. These leaves could be coming out from the energy stored in the tree. It doesn't mean that the root system is growing nice and healthy yet. So I won't find out till kind of early summer if this tree has survived the severe repotting, but I sure hope it has, because I think, after that repotting, I got all the roots sorted out. It's in good bonsai soil. I think it'll grow with a lot of vigor. And it's a beautiful old tree, so we'll see. We'll keep you updated on the giant European buckthorn. Over on this side of the polyhouse, I have my northern bog forest planting, my tight conical shaped trees. So I planted a lot of new trees in here. I think 4 new trees. So I've got it in the polyhouse just until it starts growing with a lot of vigor, and then it'll get moved outside. I have my Alberta spruce here that I repotted and quite severely root pruned this year. So it's coming out into needles, or new growth coming out on it. it's looking good. It's looking healthy so far, so I'm hoping that continues. I've got one of my jades out here. It probably should be in the heated greenhouse, but these are quite hardy as long as they don't freeze, so I'll keep my eyes on the temperature. So that was in the basement for the winter, so yeah, it's coming along nicely. I really like this jade. So now we're outside. I've got my Norway maple that I'm just letting grow wild. Yeah, just letting that grow. I've got a few miscellaneous trees here. I've got my thuja root over rock planting. You can see there's all kinds of new growth starting to happen on those. I've got my Scots pine here, root over rock, that I did some severe pruning on to get this sort of lightning shaped trunk on it. The candles are extending nicely on it. It's looking really healthy. Has pollen cones here. Oh, they're pretty well done. They're falling off now. Over here is my witch's tree, a Thuja occidentalis. Again, this is a root over rock planting. I've got a deadwood strip at the back that I'm hoping it heals over and leaves a nice scar down there on the tree. The root system's growing nice over the rock. Happy with it. Beside that is my little cedar spirit tree, root over rock again. It's looking really, really good. It's growing nicely. Looking forward to developing that into the future. Over here I have the wild thing, my Thuja occidentalis cascade. It's looking good. It's outdoors now, starting to grow. Here is my sugar maple forest, just young seedlings. They're doing well. Here's my amber maple, kind of droopy leaves on it, but that's because it's cold outside. When the sun's out and it's warm, they perk up. Here's another unknown maple. I think this is a red maple, I'm not sure. Here's another tree. You can see it has tri-lobed leaves on it. It's not a trident maple. I think it's a liquid amber tree, but I'm not sure. That was a seedling I got from Rosie. Here's my Volkswagen Beetle penjing. The trees are starting to grow, and my intention is to grow them into tall conical trees someday. Here's my Pyrenean oak that I got from Dave from Blue Sky Bonsai. It's doing really, really well. And beside that is my red maples. Or no, not red maples, silver maples. And these might be hybrid. They're a cross between the silver maple and I think the red maple. So you don't really get the true silver maple leaves on them, but they're somewhere in between. They get nice fall colors, so yeah, that's a forest in the works. Beside that is my larch forest. It's really coming out and looking nice and green. Landscape's looking good. So yeah, the larch forest is doing really, really well. Behind that is my birch trees. I pruned those already this year. Well, there's buds forming where I pruned them, so that should be, coming out into leaf again soon, those new shoots. Beside that is my small leaf linden, my cascade kind of branch on the one side, and I'm growing a new leader up the top here. Yeah, it's looking really healthy. Came into leaf really nicely this year. Lots more work to come on that tree. Here is my old growth Thuja forest on the hillside. Looking good. That'll need a pruning soon, just to sort out some of these growing tips. But it's looking good. It's nice and green. Here is my smaller Douglas fir. It's looking really, really good, growing strongly. My downy willow, it's got leaves coming out on it now. So, and there's buds all over the trunk lines, so I'm thinking that's going to grow well this year. Here's my smaller European buckthorn, which isn't so small anymore. It's really growing well. I overwintered this in the glass greenhouse this year, and it's you know, out into leaf early compared to my other buckthorn. But yeah, every branch survived on it, and it's growing really well. I'm quite happy with that. Beside that is my chickapin oak. It's leafing out nicely, a native oak. And behind that, or in front of that, is some birch. And I think that's a Hinoki cypress, I think. That should be in its own pot, but I just didn't get to it yet. Over here is the pension that Matt gave me. I pruned up these thuja trees quite severely, and they're growing quite nicely. I've got a tree here that I don't know what it is. It could be a crab apple, but I'm not sure. It has this leaf shape. Could be a hazel, some kind of a tree. On this bench, I've got my $12 clip and go juniper here. It's looking green. It's, yeah, getting ready to grow with a lot of vigor. Here's my French lilac. I gave that quite a severe root pruning, and it's just starting to pop out. I don't think the flower buds are going to open up, but there's green leaf buds forming on it now. So I think it'll survive. Beside that is my juniper I got from Joey. It's growing tremendously. Really healthy looking. Here is my blue ash. Very rare, endangered tree. Sorry about the mess in the background, but I gotta clean that up. Here's my bird's nest spruce. This is the back of it, but you can see all the new growth on it. So some of my branch pruning wasn't that successful. I just pruned back, not looking for buds, and you can see there's no growth on those branches yet. And maybe there never will be. I'll have to see. So maybe I'll just have to always look for buds when I prune in future. Beside that is my white ash that I got from David. I stumped it, and it's just growing. It's looking good. Here's my forsythia cuttings that I got from Eric and Emma, or forsythia. They're doing really well. They got some flowers this spring. Behind that is a sort of a bog planting, moss and what is it? I forget the name of it now, but they get yellow flowers. Here is my Scots pine, my windswept Scots pine in the pot by Shani. The candles are extending nicely on it. It's looking good. Here is my old growth cathedral style thuja. It's looking good. It's growing, nice and healthy looking. I've got another willow back here. That was also from Josh. I've got my mystery seedlings here that are growing well. I've got a tree here that I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's growing. I've got a red maple here on the go, growing nicely. I've got a black walnut here. Buds are swelling. No sign of growth yet, but that'll come. I've got a tray full of cuttings, trident maples, Korean maples, Arakawa maples. Yeah, a variety of cuttings in there growing. Here is my black maple, a native black maple. It's coming out into leaf nicely now. Here's my tray of field maple seedlings. I'm just letting those grow. Squirrels have been into those. Here's my old willow tree here. It's leafing out. It's not looking very healthy. Again, I might put that in the ground for a while. Another tray of field maples here. Here's my elm that I dug up from the backyard. I've been working on this for a few years. It's coming out into leaf now. Over here I have a red maple, twisty one, it's starting to leaf out. I've got a collected thuja seedling here that someone gave me. I've got a spruce here that needs repotting. And I've got my white pine here, the native white pine, which is not looking very shapely. Yeah, I'll have to do some work on that. tough tree to grow as a bonsai. You can see, you know, branches die off. You pinch things back, prune back, and I don't know, it doesn't cooperate very well. You can see the pollen cones forming on it here. They're sort of like weird shapes that grow on it that produce the pollen. But it's healthy, and I'm continuing to work on it. I did get a really good radial root system on this tree. So it has potential. It just needs, I gotta find the right techniques and a bit of luck maybe. On this bench I've got my boxwood forest. It's greening up nicely. All the trees are looking good. Here's my black locust tree, still growing strongly. I've got my Osage orange forest here. It's looking really good, nice and green and healthy. And then last but not least is my apple tree. It's growing really strongly. It's growing really nicely this year. So that's good to see. That was a quick bench tour of all the trees in the greenhouse, the polyhouse, and the ones outside on the bench. So far my repotting season has been quite successful. I'm still keeping my eyes on some of those recent repots, hoping they make it. And that's all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.